Well, it shines so bright, and it gives so much light, and it comes from the sky above. Makes me feel so free, makes me feel like me. It lights my life with love. And it seems like, and it feels like, and it seems like, yes, it feels like a brand new day. A brand new day. Whoa, 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 whoa. I was lost, and I was crossed, with my hands behind my back. I was sometimes hurt and thrown in the dirt, and shoved out on the railroad track. I was used, abused, and so confused, and I had no place to run. But I stood and looked, and my eyes got hooked on that beautiful morning sun. And it seems like, and it feels like, and it seems like, yeah, it feels like a brand new day. A brand new day. Whoa, 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 whoa. The sun shines down all on the ground, and the grass is oh so green, and my heart is still, and I've got the will, and I don't really feel so mean. Here it comes, here it comes, here it comes right now, and it comes right in on time. Well, it eases me, and it pleases me, and it satisfies my mind, and it feels like, yes, it feels like, it seems like, yes, it feels like a brand new day. A brand new day. And it seems like, and it feels like, and it seems like, yes, it feels like a brand new day. A brand new day. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Please join me in a breath. We breathe our way into just this moment. Just this moment. The breath brings us here. The breath brings us here as a powerful tool, and sometimes we need to add a little something to it, because we don't always know how to accept the wisdom of a powerful tool, the impact of it. And so lately I've been imagining water rising up on my inhale and sinking away on my exhale to kind of make it a little more embodied for me, to allow myself to sense the sinking into now that allows me to let go of what I'm thinking about, what I've been thinking about, what I'm expecting or hoping for. Some of you know I attended a funeral yesterday in Chicago, so I was sitting back there thinking about it and about made myself cry and was just like, stop thinking about it. This isn't the time to think about it. You're here now, do this work, do this work. I light a candle so that we are reminded that there is something within us that exists far and beyond in time and space of what this physical body brings to the world. And yet this physical body brings with it that light. And sometimes it feels incredibly dimmed. So we come together so that we might receive from others, so that we might share with others, so that the light can be kindled again. I've been listening on repeat to a song by U2 called There Is a Light since the service yesterday, and there is a line in that song that says, if there's a light, don't let it go out. If there's a light, don't let it go out. And so we are about that work every Sunday morning, every time we gather in service, whether it's just to each other or those around. There is a light, don't let it go out. If we were doing bulletins right now, you would have been handed a piece of paper this morning with the title of the message, and I have, to be quite honest, an ongoing and interesting relationship with message titles because I have to come up with them before I've written the message, and sometimes that goes terribly wrong. And so I'm generally not very attached to them. Sometimes, though, they invite you into wondering what on earth I'm going to talk about. So I want you to know what today's is, which is Becoming Feral, How Love Will Bring You to Life. How love will bring you to life. It does not mean that I'll necessarily be encouraging you to run barefoot in the forest, but I also will not be recommending against that this morning. I think it is a really lovely way to spend some time. What I do mean to invite us into together is another round of inquiry around what we think should be in the world. What we think should be in the world. I want us to unpack systems of belief, which I talk about all the time, dominant stories in our lives that have been handed to us, so that we can unpack them and recognize that there are other ways to be, so that we can live more consciously, so that we can live more radically, so that we can live more fully. A book that kind of goes through cycles of popularity that was very popular here when we were not in this here, at the old building, was The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And folks love those four agreements. And they go on and on and on about those four agreements. I like the four agreements. What almost nobody talks about ad nauseum is the beginning of the book where he talks about domestication, and that the point of the four agreements is to break us out of that domestication. It's a process. The domestication process is that process of us inheriting shoulds from people who are full of inherited shoulds, and how are we allowed to be. We, as a spiritual people, spend a goodly amount of time exploring those ideas. I think that if you're comfortable being in this space for something called church that looks like what we do and sounds like what we do, you've unpacked some shoulds that you probably were handed at some point. And we have blind spots. We have blind spots. And so this morning, let us be willing together to consider again those aspects of living that we think of as right. That's in quotes. Let us consider what it means in our engagement with people, with our neighbors, when they fall short of what we still believe is right and therefore is right for them. And consider the obstacles we place between ourselves and love. Amongst those obstacles, this idea of right is huge. It is huge. And it comes in many iterations. Let us consider those today. I want you to, so we're into that. our hybrid sharing moment, where if you're online and it is working today, and that is very exciting. If you are online on Facebook, if you would put in the comments, and if you're here, turn to someone near you and share something that used to be a right that was required for you or was required for others that was in some ways preventing you from doing what you felt called to do. So for me, my mom reports that I said I wanted to be a minister from the time I was 5. I suspect that that's because even at 5, I was sitting out there thinking I could do that. Some things are just hardwired into you, and that's part of me is like, well, I could do that. Sometimes I'm really wrong. Evidently, this one has worked out. And so as a teenager being told, oh, no, in fact, you cannot do that. You cannot do that. And just really believing that and saying like, well, I guess that's that. And then finding the church within where they're like, who told you what now? And letting go of that other folks' version of right that made me walk away from a dream I had, and then being invited back into it is for me a huge one. So share with someone nearby, share in the comments on Facebook something that exists in your life because you let go of some old idea of right. I suspect that a lot of that, of what might have come up for you, whether you chose to share it out loud or not, was ways that you didn't think that you could be loved, or that you could love in the way that you felt called, or it kind of falls into those lines, or worth. Can I do a thing? So I'm glad for that sharing, and for your willingness to share it with others. Thank you for those who did and felt comfortable with that this morning. By way of announcements, I'm just going to remind you again that we are currently just doing those regular meeting things as we transition into what the next phase of the world looks like. And so there's book club, just has maybe one more meeting or two more. Calendars are hard for me. And then we'll see if they do another cycle, and I'll keep you updated about that. Course in Miracles on Thursdays. First Saturday is the Wisdom Circle. We have church services here every Sunday morning. So that's regular and ongoing. And then a new thing that's happening is going to be a Buddhist meditation group that is not our programming, but we're welcoming in. So it's a woman named Hannah who is very involved personally with the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh and that kind of approach to meditation. So sitting and walking meditation, and Buddhist practice within the world, right? So not separate from, but within. So they're going to start those on October 3rd, it looks like. They're going to meet on Sundays from 4 to 5:30 here in the building. And I shared that to our Facebook page and our Facebook group for the church, and I'll continue to kind of put the word out. I'll add it to the email now that I have the specifics. And anybody's welcome. You don't have to be Buddhist or consider yourself Buddhist. It's a really beautiful, gentle kind of mindfulness practice that many folks might find useful. So put that on on your calendar for yourself or for folks you might think would enjoy that. Let's take a breath. Let's allow ourselves to sink more fully into this practice of building church, whether we're doing it in the physical presence or the virtual presence, gathering ourselves in for this morning. Welcoming back after a year and a half, Donnie to the morning with music, and Reverend Scott Lakin with words of meditation and prayer.
O God of my heart, not be all else for me save that thou art. Though my best thought by day or by night, waking or sleeping, thy presence my life. True word, I ever with me do thou art heard. Thou my great spirit, my journey begun. Thou in me dwelling, and I with thee one. Riches I heed, no man's empty praise. Thou mine inheritance, now and always. Heart of my own heart, heart of my own heart, wherever befall, still be my vision, still be my vision, still be my vision, O Spirit of all.
Good morning, and to all of those at home. I just have to say it's a blessing that I took for granted, being able to see your faces at least once a week. And so for those of you here, thank you. At the Church Within, we meditate to connect with Source, to clear the clutter of our mind, and remember, as is our inheritance, that we are one in the mind of God, capable of being love in every circumstance, and wise enough to bring the truth to our hearts. So this morning I invite you to relax in your chair, feet on the floor, breathe, allow your shoulders to relax, and if it feels comfortable, close your eyes. Release the burdens of your day and sink into the comfortable, loving arms of God. Breathe and move past the thoughts that arise, seeking comfort in the silence and wisdom offered. Relax and take another deep breath. And then another deep breath. To be able to survive in our world today, we must think and think and think. But for this moment, at this time, let that go be one with God, and breathe. Now that we are relaxed and open into listening, let's join together as one family in prayer, knowing that all prayers are heard by Spirit. Loving Creator, we come to you as a family. We listen for your words and your guidance. Then we muster the strength to be strong enough to do what you ask. And we come to you now with prayers that include being grateful for the official and unofficial leaders of this church that provide a strong foundation of love and truth. We pray for our pastor, Darren, who continues to role model love. That in this coming week, we look to the right and to the left to see those around us who might need our love and support. For people who are struggling with a decision or a dependence or a medical condition, that we will show up as angels in skin to help them be strong. We pray specifically for Josie as she heals after her ankle surgery, for Sharon, who has had a total knee replacement, that those two will feel the healing warmth of love and healing of body. For our homeless neighbors, for musician Governor Davis, for the Taylor family, for Betty Sino's dentist who lost their son to cancer and will be memorializing him today. And this is the time for you to add your own private concerns. Loving God, we know that in the brightest day and in the darkest nights, you are, and we are glad. Amen. Reverend Joan Sirk would conduct meditations and then leave us with a weekly affirmation. The affirmation I leave with you for this week is that I am love in all places. And so it is. The Church Within was founded on the power of prayer, and if you have a prayer request, you can leave it in the prayer box on the prayer table. You can see me after church, or you can go online, and there will be a team of folks who will pray with you and for you during this week. Again, it's great to see your face.
I'm going to tell you a story. This is a story that comes from East India. It is a teaching story, a very old story. I learned it from a podcast called Living Myth, that is really a series of mini lectures done by a man named Michael Meade. And the goal of his work is to invite us to find ways to apply these old teaching stories, these old myths in modern day life, in our own lives. And so very much us, right? Practical spirituality, practical understanding of myths. He tells us this particular story, and when I wanted to find out more about it and researched it online, I can only find it mentioned as something that Joseph Campbell used to share. It's in a book of his, and he would share it in person, but I couldn't find any other history on it. I'm going to share it with you anyway, and I'll tell you, I'm really only interested in sharing this story with you because of a line that Michael Meade inserts into the story that I'm not actually going to tell you when I tell you the story. So let the anticipation build in you now. There was a tigress in the forest, and she was carrying a cub, and these were lean times, and so she was quite malnourished, and she was very close to the end of the gestation. And as she was making her way through the forest, she found herself at the edge of a hill, of a cliff above a herd of wild goats. And she thought, this is it. This is it. And so she crept to the edge of the cliff and she jumped. And as she did, the impact of landing caused her to go into labor, and she birthed a cub right there in the midst of the very frantic goats, and she died in the process, so weakened was her body. And so the goats eventually calmed down and gathered round and came up, and they did what the mother tiger would have done, because they recognized this is a baby. And it is said that a mother tiger, just like a domesticated cat, will lick every part of the baby once it's born to clean it up. And so the mother goats started doing this together, licking every part of the cub. And they then raised the cub as if it were their own, because that's a weird thing that happens. We have the internet now, and we have proof that this sort of strange thing does in fact happen. And the cub grew up thinking it was a goat, evidently, according to the story, and started even making sounds like goats made, and lived happily amongst the goats. One day, because evidently this happens pretty frequently, an adult tiger found its way to the cliff above the valley where the goats lived, and thought, this is it, this is my meal, and then sees this baby tiger, and because animals must be turned into partial humans for us to have teaching stories of them, it had a very interesting thought process about why is that tiger amongst these goats. And so the tiger leapt into the valley and snatched up the baby goat tiger and took it away. And the baby goat tiger's like, oh no, I'm going to get eaten because I'm a goat, and that's going to eat me. Except the way the story is told, the tiger, they get very smart right now. The tiger takes the goat tiger to the edge of the water so it can see itself and see the tiger, and then recognize, like, oh, I'm not a goat after all. So I get very lost at that point of these kinds of stories, because I'm like, I don't think that baby tiger looked at itself in the water and had a self-referential moment. And then I realize I'm ruining the story, and I try to suspend disbelief. I mean, if you have lasers and a spaceship and superpowers, like, I'm all for it. That makes perfect sense to me. But tigers that are like reflecting on the nature of their existence in the water, that's a step too far. That's a step too far. I want to tell you also what I don't like about the story, and it's of all stories this ilk, which is that then, of course, they want to apply this to you. Right, that you're going to have a realization, and you've lived your whole life as a goat, but secretly you were a tiger and you just didn't know it, and now you can rise up in your full tiger self and then figure out what it means to live amongst goats as a tiger. I find that gross, to be quite honest, because first of all, we're all the same species, and I don't like metaphors that make some of us predators and some of us prey. I don't like it at all. Like, it shouldn't be, that is not useful. In this instance, it's a story about enlightenment, right? There's a reference in the sutras to the Dalai Lama calling it the roar of enlightenment, and so they use this kind of story. But enlightened people are not, in fact, predator, tigers moving amongst the goats. In the West, we don't use tigers and goats because we don't have tigers here so much, but we use other animals, don't we? Right? Wolves and sheeps. Sheeps? That's how I'm pluralizing it. Wolf and sheep, right? And then it becomes divisive, and then, well, wolves are better than sheep. Well, but why would wolves be better than sheep, first of all? And also, you're just a human. You are not hunting in a pack, and you do not produce fleece. So you have neither the usefulness of a wolf or a sheep, to be quite honest. Figure out how to be a good human. Figure out how to be a good human. So I don't like the hierarchy that is built into that kind of story. I don't like the kind of energy that says I'm going to walk around the world as a wolf or a tiger. So there's that. There's, of course, takeaway from the story that is positive, or I wouldn't have shared it. I just wanted to be clear about my struggles with it. So it is a story that is showing us in metaphor what it means to wake up from domestication. Because what we really believe, if we're being honest about those stories, is that there's something about us that makes us less human than other people, or more human than other people. And that's a hard thing to acknowledge, because we know the history of how that pans out over and over and over, and we don't. And so it feels better to be like, no, I'm going to be a tiger because they're powerful, not a goat because they're weak. But really, we're just people. And we have to domesticate our way out of that hierarchical thinking. We have to flatten that. We have to educate ourselves and mindfulness ourselves out of rightness and of righteousness, and find a way to be together, And I want us to explore that in a bit, but I want to share first the line that I left out of the telling from Mead. So the reason I left it out is because when I heard this story, I was walking the dog, shocking, and I had to pause it to really think about this line. And you, thankfully, can't just pause me when you want to, unless you're online, and then you can. But if you're here, I'm just going to keep rambling on for better or worse. And I want you to be able to really hear this line. Mead says that it is sometimes believed that if there is a part of a baby animal that is not licked clean, the baby will not survive. Then he says, perhaps it's much the same with humans. If there is a part of us that isn't loved, then we will not be able to fully live. If there is a part of us that isn't loved, then we will not be able to fully live. What if it's possible that if there is a part of us that isn't loved, we struggle to fully be alive? So when he said that, when I was listening to it, immediately a list. Oh yeah, here are the things. And I wonder if you had a few things that popped into your mind as well. I think about them as points of resistance. Right? Points of resistance between who you would like to be or who you thought you wanted to be and who you are and are becoming, because there are those parts of yourself that you've been taught are not lovable. And so not only were they not loved by the people you wanted to love them, but you were told they were not lovable. And it often isn't in words, right? We're doing math all the time. We're observing people around us all the time. And when we're small people, we're sponges. And we observe them and they're big, and so we think they must be right. They must be right. The messages we get about ourselves sometimes are direct, but they're often when we see someone like us being treated in a way or spoken about in a way. And so those points of resistance as we grow into adults and as we develop into this full human existence where we're like, that feels like what I want. That feels like who I could be, but, which reveals that in fact we don't think it's possible. We don't believe what we've just said. So think about your list. If you can't think of a list of specific items, think about the feeling. The feeling of thinking, I loved this and I wanted someone to love it in me. Why didn't you do it? Why didn't you express it? The fear of being made fun of? The fear that if you did it, you wouldn't be good enough at it? That you would be discounted? That it was important to you and other people think it's not worthy of your time because of other people telling you what you should be doing? What you should be doing? There are parts of your life that have, by their absence, left you feeling short of fully alive. There are parts of your life that you might even be inhabiting, but in a less than fully committed sort of way, right? Like you just want to put your toe in the water. That space, which we talk about often, between who we would like to be in the world, what we would like to be doing in the world, and where we are now, feels like a chasm we could never cross with sheer walls on either side. We can't get over, we can't climb through. What a dangerous place. What a dangerous place that is. That's what it feels like inside us. That's what it feels like inside us. And in reality, with a bit of planning and support, to be quite honest, the risks are usually pretty minimal, depending on how we weigh failure and how we weigh coming in second or trying a second time. The risks are usually pretty minimal, especially when we are doing what we are doing simply for the love of doing it. Simply for the love of doing it. Let's take a breath together. I hold these two ideas up next to each other of domestication and of what it means to step into our full life. Because it's the same domestication that happened for our caregivers that they then handed to us. And maybe they fixed some of it. Fix, that's a strange word for me, but it feels right. Maybe they made some adjustments. Right? It's not exactly the same. And they handed us what they could hand us. They handed us what they can hand us. And we could spend our entire life warring against that, to be quite honest. Like we could spend our entire life just in battle with those caregivers who didn't give us what we wanted, and how dare they. Or we could let them off the hook and we could let ourselves off the hook. I'm not talking about abuse. I always want to be clear about this, because if we've experienced abuse, like it's really easy to twist what I've just said. Like get yourself out of an abusive situation as quickly as you can. You don't have to endure it. I'm talking about just the ways people fall short. People fall short because they didn't know that we needed that loved, or they didn't know how to love that in us because it made them afraid. My mom and I had a years-long struggle when she found out that I was gay. Years long. And the struggle was not that she didn't love me, it's that she was terrified for me. She was terrified for me. It took me a long time to get that, and it took me an even longer time to kind of forgive her for how poorly she handled it, but it was the very best that she had. It was the very best that she had, and she got through it, and we got through it. And I couldn't be more grateful for that. In some ways, as we break ourselves free from that list of shoulds, we invite others to be broken free from that list of shoulds. And in some ways, when we become more feral, we terrify domesticated people. We're also domesticated people, let's not forget, right? But as you start to shake that off, people are either drawn into it and excited by it, or they are terrified because they know that if you don't do the right things, then something horrible is going to happen, because that's what they were handed. That's what they were handed, and then they become very worried about you. Thank God my mom didn't have an added layer of thinking I was going to go to hell. Right? What a hard lift. What a hard lift. And also, we can get to a point of sort of cynicism or callousness where we're like, well, I never got to do that. Right? Well, who are you? Who are you to just like be free? I didn't get to do that. I had responsibilities. I had a list of, right? Now, I will own that as something I imagine being a very miserable way to live. I didn't get to have joy, and therefore you shouldn't either. It's not a struggle for me, but it's been one I've been on the receiving end of. And man, that's a sad way to walk through life. The more we are in that handed down, inherited system of believing what is right and what is not right, the harder we struggle with folks who have stepped out of it. And it might feel like I've just said the same thing, but I didn't. Because while other people struggle with the places that we've broken free, we struggle with them sometimes too. The ego is terrified of a liberated mind. Hear that. The ego is terrified of a liberated mind. Whether it was a message you were given, spoken or unspoken, and then you broke that taboo, how did that feel for you? Because for a time, our own ego mind is like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, what are you doing? I don't know why I sounded like Mr. Ed, but the voice of my ego is not usually Mr. Ed, but today, what are you doing, Wilbur? Right? But that happens. So when we, even as people who have a lifetime of successes, when we're at the next beginning, all those old terrors come up, and we don't spend enough time accounting for all the ways we know we can do what we're going to do and all the ways we are empowered because of our life experience and the community around us. We spend all the ways thinking how it could go wrong, which is someone who's very good at that list. I think it's useful for a time. You just eventually have to stop that list, right? Prepare yourselves, but don't mire. But we have this whole list of like how we might not succeed this time, and so we don't start. And we look at our past, and someone else would be like, what an incredible track record you have. And we're like, well, but here this went wrong, and this wasn't smooth, and this wasn't what it should have been. And, you know, Yvonne Brandenburg said, if you can look back at your life and you've had enough to eat, which doesn't mean you were never hungry, it just means you are here, we are here. You've had enough to eat and you've never been eaten by anything, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. In the grand history of human civilization and pre-civilization, like, you found the food and nothing found you to be food. Like, hashtag winning, the early humans would have said. Probably. Man, I'm off the rails, but as I think about that, I'm like, oh, every cave painting of humans and animals is social media of we came here and we found food and we ate it and it didn't eat us and we've left evidence because we put art on the wall. So do that. Do that with your life. Consider those ways that you've broken out of the shoulds, what that felt like, and how it might invite you forward as opposed to hold you back. As I mentioned, I was in Chicago this weekend and I traveled with my friend Loretta, and we were chatting while I was writing the message. And I offered her those questions, this kind of consideration, and asked her for an example. And she came up with one that was rather funny, which was better than I could do in the moment. So she said, you know what weirdly I remember is when I was in my early 20s and the very first time that I dropped an F-bomb in front of my very pious mother. And she says, I was shocked. I was shocked that it had just poured from my mouth as if it were a normal thing to do. And she was shocked that it had happened. And in fact, she was so shocked that her reaction was just to pretend it didn't happen. And so she just very quietly stood up and went about her business in the kitchen and was so deeply uncomfortable that the only way through was to pretend the thing had not happened. And she was like, it was so taboo to have said that word to my mother. And it shocked us both. right? And there was no negative consequence. Loretta's mother didn't just continue walking around like a robot that couldn't hear her talking. But there are those moments we have with little ones and then bigger ones. I suspect you have an example of your own, or 3 times that you've stepped outside of expectations of others and yourself, and maybe some folks had negative reactions to you. I suspect there are times you've stepped out of expectations and had negative reactions to yourself, even while knowing this was your salvation, to step out of that expectation. And then I'll tell you a me story where I failed, my favorites. I fixed it up. I taught a pottery class recently to a young couple, and one of them is about to graduate with an architecture degree from Ball State, a program I've interpreted, and I know that's a big deal because a lot of people do not make it through that program. And so I said, oh my gosh, what an amazing accomplishment that is. And she says, it's not really that big of a deal. And I'm like, nope, I've been there for the program. It's a big deal. Like, people don't survive the program. Like, they leave college because they can't make the cut. And she's like, it's really just about work ethic and focus and studying. I'm like, yep, that's literally what college is about. And a lot of people don't make it through the thing you make it through. And she's like, yeah, I don't know. And I said, okay. And she said, I'm not sure I want to be an architect at this point. And I was like, When I make that face, if I ever make that face to you, it means the conglomeration of my parents is about to come out of my mouth. And so I'm trying to learn that myself. And not my evolved now parents, but like my parents when I was 12. And so I said, what are you considering? And she said, well, pottery is on my list. And I said, oh, well, don't do that. You'll make so much money as an art. And it's so hard to make, right? And then I hear it, and I'm like, what are you doing? You chittick. That's what I call myself when I'm out of line. Chittick. Come on. So we throw pots, we're doing the class, and I said, you know what? Can we go back to what I said earlier, which included don't throw away all that work. It's virtually impossible to make a good living as a potter. Don't throw away all that work. Good God. I said, can we circle back to that? So first of all, you can't unhear what I've said, and I can't unsay it, but I would like you to try as hard as you can. Please try as hard as you can to unhear what I have said, because what I said wasn't true. If you want to be a potter, be a potter. You've had the accomplishment of this schooling, and it says a lot about you, and it doesn't say what you have to do next. It doesn't say what you have to do next. So when old dudes like me look at you, a young woman, and say, no, do this, ignore us. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what we're doing. And I don't know if I undid the harm. Maybe some of it. Maybe it will become a filter for her in the future to be like, oh, that old guy at the Pottery Center, because I assure you she thought I was old, said that I don't have to listen to this nonsense. And I still have the very human thing of, man, that is a really big investment of time and energy. But you know what would be a bigger investment of time and energy? 30 years as an architect, not wanting to be an architect because she had invested in a thing. That's a big waste of time and energy. At this point, she's at a pivot point that can say, look what I've done, and now I'm going to do this. Man, I hate that I said it. I'm glad that I went back. Because that's a frightening moment, isn't it? When you're like, oh, I just did something really that I hate, and now I'm going to tell you. And we've met 20 minutes ago, so it's perfect we should venture into this land together. Here's the other thing, and this is maybe the most important part. If you can come up with a list of parts of yourself that you know were not loved in the way that you wanted them to be loved by the people you wanted to love them in you that way, love yourself. Love those parts of yourself. That's the letting them off the hook and yourself off the hook. There are other people who can love those parts of yourself as well if you can't quite get there. Let somebody else love you. Don't spend your whole life starving because the buffet is set before you and your favorite dish isn't there, and so you just sit and wait and starve. There are so many people well equipped to love in you, who you are, as you are. Just now accept it. Welcome it. Let it in. Let it in to yourself. And if someone else comes up and fails, that doesn't make them more right. That's the story, right? Oh, nope, you're right. I was agreeing with you this whole time. That guy lied and said I was lovable. You can absolutely be the one who loves previously unloved, pushed to the back burner or all the way off the stove aspects of who you are into living right now, like today. And if you can't find it, like hang out with someone outside after service and be like, there's this thing I've been thinking about. And they'll be like, I love that about you. I love that about you. Isn't that something? And make part of your practice looking for those parts of people. Fan the flames. Fan the flames, because the incredibly good news is that when you offer the love and when you open yourself to the love of others, the only voice left that is in disagreement is the voice of ego, and it's just doing its job. Greet it. I remember you because you never leave. No, thank you. Get on with what you're doing. The world needs you more feral. The world needs you more feral. You may look no different, you may present no different, but you will know. You will know you have taken this step. The world needs us to live outside of expectations in ways that are truly safe for others and for ourselves, and ways that allow us to travel beyond that false notion that we could ever be anything other than lovable. The only real risk is our own liberation, our own transformation, and the communal liberation and transformation of others. That's how God moves through us as love, draws us together as love, creates us anew as love. You do not have to be a tiger. You don't have to avoid being a goat. You've never been either. You are a human, hardwired for this very journey. You are hardwired for love. Let that be the truth that sets you free. Amen.
When darkness tries to roll over my bones, the sorrow comes to steal the joy I know. When brokenness and pain is all I know, oh, I won't be shaken. Oh, I won't be shaken. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Shame no longer has a place to hide. I am not a captive to the lies, and I'm not afraid to leave my past behind. Oh, I won't be shaken. Oh, I won't be shaken. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in always get what you want. You can't always get what you want. You can't always get what you want. But if you try sometimes, you might find that my fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love.
In just a moment, we will join together in the offering prayer. And as you know, if you've been coming, we're not passing the basket because it's, can you imagine, just like, should be thrown, there'd be injuries. So we've put it on the pedestal at the back. You can drop stuff in there. You can still give online. Many of you are doing EFT. There will be a text number that's probably there already. No, that doesn't make sense because we're about to pray together, and that's when the words go up, Darren. It's not my first time at all. And no matter what you've heard. So all those ways still work. We'll say the prayer together. We'll take a moment. We will move into our closing song and our closing prayer, and then we will make our way into this glorious week. I'm glad you were here, friends, and I'm glad you are here. I wish I would get here. Creator God, all that I am and all that I have comes from your limitless supply. I am an open and willing conduit through which your good flows. I share all that I have as you direct. Love, friendship, prosperity, peace, abundance, and joy are gifts that I share and receive. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you, God. Amen. May the peace of God go before us into this glorious week, and may the peace remain wherever we have walked. Peace above us and below us, peace to the right and to the left, peace within and without, peace in the face of everyone we meet, peace in the words to everyone we greet. Amen.